Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Wandering Scribe Book Impressions series. In honor of Asian American Pacific Islander Month, we dive into the works of Wandering Scribe alumni Emily Renk Hawthorne's duology, beginning with the first book of Mountains and Seas. Now, for those unfamiliar with Of Mountains and Seas, the story goes as follows. For some, the only way to possess magic is to steal it from others. Born without magic, Davis is an outcast in his own shapeshifter family. Yearning for his father's approval, he sets down a path that intertwines with Iris, a girl whose own ambitions are hindered by a mysterious illness. Their quest leads to Uras, one of California's smallest towns, unremarkable until they discover a cave of magic transferring stones. Now they have a chance to change their fates, but they are not alone. When locals stumble upon the cave, they unknowingly set into motion a series of events that threatens to expose Davis's past. As dark truths surface, one question endures. How much are they willing to take in their quest for power? Now, I am very excited to read this book, everybody. So, without further ado, let us begin. Prologue. Winter, 1935. The first glimmers of consciousness seeped in, and with a start, Randall's son realized he couldn't see. At first, he thought it was a moonless night, and he was at home in bed. But the feel of his hot breath against a cloth, the binds around his wrists and ankles, and the whirring of the car beneath him proved otherwise. He pulled against the restraints. They must be magic. Like all magic things, he could feel their power, whether it was the warm glow of another shifter or the hum of the restraints that tingled against his skin at that moment. He doubted either his powers would affect magical restraints, but he would try. The car rumbled to a stop. Voices murmured to each other from the front seat. Doors opened, and the crunch of footsteps came to his door. A vague recent memory surfaced in Randall's mind. He had been leaving the casino when a woman and a man approached him, but that's all he could remember. Based on the situation he was currently in, one of them must have the power of magical bindings, and the other must have some sort of sleep-inducing power. Randall sighed. Alcoholic fumes accumulated beneath the cloth and burned his nostrils and eyes. Maybe that second part was his own doing. The door next to Randall opened. Hands yanked him out onto the ground and dragged him a few feet before forcing him onto his knees. A sharp pain shot through his left leg, and something clattered next to him. Most likely his cane. At least they hadn't thrown away. One of the people removed the cloth sack from his head, and he was momentarily blinded by the car headlights. He squinted and turned his head. Past the glare of the headlights, outlines of trees towered around them. Aromas of pine and dirt blended with the alcohol on his breath and the gasoline from the car. The man and woman approached from each side, becoming looming silhouettes in front of the car. Randall took his chance and transformed. His bones and joints cracked as they lengthened and spread, a sensation that was second nature for him. Thick horse fur sprouted from his skin, absorbing his clothing. His nails elongated into long yellow claws, murderous yet useless against the magical restraints. He glared at the two silhouettes that looked half their size before his growing body, while snapping at the binds and bellowing to no avail. The woman laughed. In an instant her body elongated from her neck down, her arms and legs fusing into a serpentine body. A monstrous, human-headed snake stood before him, scales glistening in the headlights. The tip of her tail lashed out, smacking Randall across the face. Even a grizzly wouldn't be able to break those. Randolph huffed from the blow. He knew that voice and that shifter form. Susan By. But who was the man with her? He almost laughed when he realized. How cute. Mrs. and Mr. By. A wife and husband gangster duo. What was his name again? It didn't matter. Susan was the one in charge. The humor faded. They wouldn't get away with this. He shrunk back into his human form. His bones realigned, and his fur resorbed into his skin as his clothes reformed. He looked down at his hands. White cords twisted around his wrist, shimmering like snake coils around and around. He couldn't break through the binds with sheer strength, but maybe he could burn through them, or at least hurl a fireball at his captors. A tingling sensation arose from his inner core and intensified as it moved toward his hands. In less than a second, sparks leaped from his palms, burst into flames, and coalesced into a bright burning ball. The restraints remained intact, so he prepared to shoot the fireballs at one of the silhouettes. At that moment, a ball of water struck the fire. Steam sizzled into the air until both elements were nullified. This time, Mr. Bai laughed. Did you think we didn't do our homework on you, Randall? That was right. Susan could summon and manipulate water, so that meant Mr. Bai had the power of magical binding, and the somnolence had to be his own fault after all. Randall swore under his breath, made a half-hearted promise not to drink as much. He thought about forming another fireball, but knew that even in its best-case scenario, that would only lead to a standoff against fire and water, and he was outnumbered here. But he had a secret weapon that most other shifters did not. Another secondary power. Thrusting his hands down onto the ground, he simultaneously melted the ground in front of him and built it back up. He intended to build a wall and then tunnel himself to safety, but suddenly his arms were jerked up from the ground. Another white rope had formed from between his wrists to a branch overhead. He pulled his arms up and away from the ground. His stone masonry was useless if he couldn't touch the ground. As I said, we did our homework on you. Randall cleared his throat. What do you want? The same thing as you, Susan said. Purity of our kind, to remove the weakness of the statistics from the shifters. No one wants that more than me, Randall said. Yet you have done little to change the situation, Mr. Bai said. Even in your position of power and influence, your promises remained empty. Susan transformed into human form. Her black coat and trousers were formed where scales had been. She turned to her husband. We should have expected he'd grow a soft spot for the statics. You know what his son is, right? Randall spat into the dirt. That is precisely why I'm such an ardent supporter of the cause. My son is an abomination. The Bais approached each other and spoke in whispers before turning back to Randall. You have 1 week, Susan said, to change your wife's mind. Randall scoffed under his breath. He had tried everything so far to persuade his wife, who at the young age of 60 had achieved a higher political position than he ever could in his 362 years, and with her popularity, she would most likely be re-elected again and again. Yet that didn't bother him. She was beautiful and strong, the strongest shifter he knew, and he respected that. What bothered him was that she coddled the boy, even going as far as to be pro-integration because of him. And the longer she held that view and stayed in power, the more likely it would come to fruition. Integrating shifters and statics would be a death sentence for shifter kind. His son was living proof of that. Somewhere in past generations, static blood had gotten in and wiped out his ability to develop powers. Otherwise, Mr. Bai said, we'll have to resort to more drastic measures. Shifters dead at the hands of statics is sure to come with an increase in anti-immigration and integration sentiment. Before Randall could respond, they got into the car and sped off. As the car left, the restraints disintegrated from Randall's wrists and ankles. He sat alone in the dust for several minutes, rubbing his wrists. No one treated him that way, like an animal to be tied and thrown in the dirt. He would not be cowed by threats like some weakling. He would not only show them he could get anti-integration implemented in the council, but he would also make them pay for what they did to him tonight. He massaged his temples, willing a foggy memory to form. Many years ago, he participated in the creation of a special and powerful stone that had since become illegal. Despite his unusual inebriation, he had swiped a few unbeknownst to others. He needed them now for protection, in case he couldn't change his wife's mind. Otherwise, he shuddered to think of it. But if necessary, he knew what he had to do. Chapter 1. Davis. Fall. 1932. The pillow absorbed his ears and quieted his sniffles. His mother's voice called from the bedroom door. Davis? Davis' son buried his face into the pillow and kept really still. He didn't want her to hear or see him crying. But footsteps approached his bed, and a weight sank onto the bed next to him. A gentle touch rubbed his back, releasing a sob from his throat. Father hates me, Davis said into his pillow. His mother took a deep breath. He doesn't understand you. These things have happened before, and it doesn't mean you're not a wonderful, darling boy. Davis turned his face to his mother. Is there any way my powers could come out later? His mother crouched next to his bed, a ray of sun across her face. In the golden light of the autumn afternoon, his mother's pale complexion glowed. For a brief moment, Davis's hope soared. Was this the shifter glow he had always heard about? Were his powers suddenly manifesting? Then his mother stood up, and with her face in the shadow, the glow disappeared. You never know, but Davis could tell she didn't believe it. His mother motioned for him to sit up. Let me tell you a story. Before you were born, shifters found they could imbue certain stones with powers. The process is very complex, and only certain people were allowed to know how to do it. The effects are strongest when stones are imbued while still in the ground. Whole mines were created full of magical stones. As you can imagine, this caused a great deal of excitement. What kind of powers did they have? Davis found himself drawn into his mother's story. She was a natural public speaker and looked especially distinguished, with her pinned curls, red lips, and floor-length satin evening gown. There was no doubt another political event that evening. Oh, all sorts of things. Some could heal a minor cut, others change color at random, entertainment for children. Some thought a stone could be more convenient or powerful than tinctures, leading to a lot of experimentation to replace love and forgetfulness tinctures with stones. And one is being refined as we speak. A camouflage stone that will keep shifters distinguished and disguised from statics. Anti-integration enthusiasts are particularly excited about that one. A stone that would keep shifters from statics? Davis knew that he wouldn't be accepted in shifter society. His father had made that clear. But he hadn't expected to be physically separated as well. Would he wander the streets and never again see another shifter? His mother seemed to read his thoughts. Don't worry. You know I'm for integration. As chairperson of the Shifter Council, I will never allow anything to separate us. She put an arm around Davis's shoulder, and he tried to smile. He hoped what she said to be true. She continued, what I want to tell you about is one stone in particular. This is very important. You have to promise not to breathe a word about it to anyone else. Davis shook his head enthusiastically. I won't. It's called a transfer stone. It supposedly can transfer magic from one shifter to another shifter, or even a static. Davis's eyes widened. Was she saying what he thought she was? She put up a hand as if telling him to slow down his thoughts. This is not something to take lightly. The council considered this stone to be too dangerous and banned it from use, and for good reason. To take magic from a shifter is like taking a limb, so the location of the mine was hidden, and most shifters these days have never heard of them. All stone imbuements are now very regulated. But you're the chairperson. Couldn't you find out where the location is? Why tell me about this if there is nothing to be done? The desperation in his voice was obvious. and Davis hated that he sounded so weak. But the stone could change everything for him. He was sure that he had to be someone out there who didn't need their powers as much as he needed them. This was before my time. The current members of the council no longer know. I only know about it because my father used to tell me about it as a child. I thought they were just stories until one night your father came home from the casino babbling about special stones. I couldn't get any more information from him, and by the morning he seemed to have forgotten. But it got me thinking again about the stories my father used to tell me. And now I'm telling you because I want you to hold on to hope that you won't be left behind. If something like that stone could be developed in the past, other possibilities may come out that could help you in the future. Chapter 2, Ling, Summer 1985. On the second Monday of June, Ling Guan readied herself to meet her daughter for lunch as she did every month. An outliner of the local shifter community, Ling enjoyed living in the most populated areas of Uras, where she could people watch and feel more engaged with the community, even if the surrounding statics had no idea she was there. Today was great for people watching as Main Street was bustling with families and children enjoying their summer break. There were some tourists as well, taking photos in front of the quaint brick sidewalks lined with maple trees, a decent crowd by any standards. Ling turned onto Redwood Road, an unpaved two-lane road that led into the forest where most of the local shifters in Eurus lived. The canopy instantly cooled the warm summer days as she entered the forest. Along the length of the road, camouflage stones affixed to wood posts guarded against static passers-by. Their multi-green surfaces looked almost like a quarter-sized patch of moss. If a static happened upon the road or walked by one of the houses, she would continue on by as if she had seen nothing but an extension of the forest. Ling's daughter's house was at the end of the road. A large lone redwood stood in front of the house on the right. She walked past it, up the porch steps, and knocked on the door. A moment later, her daughter's husband answered. He looked surprised. Did you two miss each other? Ling wrinkled her brow as he continued. She said she told you she would head out early today and meet you on the road to town. Her daughter hadn't said anything to her about that. No sense in making a big deal until she found out more information. I must have forgotten. I'll head back and find her. She's probably at the restaurant already. Ling kept her voice nonchalant. That felt a little strange about the whole situation. She said goodbye and walked back to town. They usually went to the Redwood Cafe in the middle of Main Street, the only shifter restaurant in town, so she headed there now. As she walked, she suddenly sensed a shifter's glow down Maple Lane, a quaint neighborhood street. Turning, she saw her daughter emerge from the house nearest her. Her daughter rushed to the street, seemingly not seeing Ling until the last moment. Startled, her daughter ran her hand over her disheveled hair. Mama, I was just coming to meet you. Ling looked at her daughter and back at the house. She didn't sense any other shifters in the vicinity. Why were you in that static's house? Her daughter face flushed. What? I was just taking a walk until it was time to meet you. A sickening feeling grew in Ling's stomach. She glanced at the house again and saw a man peeking out the window from inside. Dark brown skin, curly hair, just like her daughter's husband. Not again. The red in her daughter's cheeks grew darker. You're mistaken. I was only taking a walk. I covered for you once. I won't do it again. Please don't ask me to. And put your camouflage pendant back on before one of our fellow shifters sees you without it. Her daughter gasped and touched her neck, then quickly found her pendant in her bag and put it on. The green teardrop-shaped stone had a matted look against her daughter's glowing skin. Her daughter gritted her teeth. I'm not going to ask you to cover for me because there's nothing to hide. Ling felt both numb and enraged at the same time. I don't understand it. You have a loving husband at home, and you insist on finding these look-alike statics. You don't know what he's like at home. Then tell me. Help me understand. The sneaking around is not good for you or your family. Could you imagine what would happen to our community if Jackson were involved in a scandal like this? Exactly, only our reputation matters to you. I care whether you end up in jail as well as for breaking the law. Can't you see the bigger picture? My husband's ideas are too rigid and outdated. It's time for a change. Shifters and statics should be allowed to mingle. And you're paving the way for infidelity? It's not like you're in a traditional relationship either. What about Baba? What would Baba have thought if he were still alive? Ling winced. That's not fair. You know it's not the same thing. She had never dallied with statics. You know what, mother? I'm not hungry anymore. Maybe I'll see you next month. With that, she walked away. Ling to watch her go, her heart racing. What was she going to do? The last time the boyfriend had ended it with her daughter. That didn't stop her daughter from finding someone new. If it was like last time, the man would be from the city. Maybe she could use an oblivion tincture and send him back to the city. She had to see if there was a way to convince Meg to get some from the council for her. Heading home, Ling pondered the story she could tell Meg. Maybe there was a static that had seen her shifter form that needed his memory erased, but then Ming would insist on applying the tincture herself. That was her job on the council, after all. She rubbed her face and took a moment to compose herself outside her home. The dragon-headed Quinlan statues on either side of the front door peered up at her, majestic and calm. She patted one of their stone heads. Give me luck, she murmured before going inside. Inside, Meng was in the kitchen sauteing food for her lunch. She looked up as Ling walked into the room. Hi, darling. Back home already? Ling nodded and tried to smile naturally as she sat at the dinner table. She focused on the charming cadence of Meng's British accent to distract herself. Meng turned off the stove and the overhead fan. She brought a bowl of her food to the table and sat across from Ling to eat. Everything okay? Meng said between bites of chicken and vegetables. Ling hated keeping things from Meng, but she didn't want Meng involved in the situation either. It's just that this man might have seen my shifter form. Meng put down her chopsticks. What? When? A month ago. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Why are you talking and taking chances shifting around here? You know your camouflage stone isn't reliable in shifter form. That's why we have safe spaces to transform. I know, I know. Sometimes it's so hard to wait until our next trip to the city. You know how it is. Anyway, the man was a drunk tourist. I thought he'd go home and forget about it as a drunken hallucination, but he's back. And he moved into a house on Maple Lane. I just saw him now, and that's why I'm home early. I think he's trying to join the monster hunters out here. Maybe you can use a little oblivion tincture to tell him to go back to San Francisco? Ming put up a hand and closed her eyes. She took a deep breath. I'll take care of it. But please, my darling, let's be safer in the future. I have enough on my plate, having to fend Iris off at work. Ling reached across the table and took Ming's hands. Yes, of course. Thank you. She kissed Ming's hands. Meng waved her off and resumed eating. Ling smiled and let out an inward sigh of relief. Meng didn't know the truth. She was doing a good thing for their community and for her daughter. After it was done, she would call her daughter, apologize for her behavior for him today, and suggest they get together for lunch next week. Maybe she could suggest they start getting together more than once a month. That's what her daughter needed to keep her out of trouble. More family involvement. And on that note, we will be stopping here. Now, this is a very good read. I very much like the style and approach to the story that Emily has done. And you get a sense of what the world is like between shapeshifters and statics, that there is a hidden community within. And I love how we get a little bit of sense of what the world is like, the communities are like, what the politics are like, and how the shifters are trying to do everything they can to protect their way of life, protect their culture. And I think a lot of people are definitely going to resonate with the characters Davis and definitely for Ling's daughter, which I have no doubt is going to continue in book two. Now, as for my rating, this is easily an excellent read, another 5 out of 5. And this concludes our episode of the Wandering Scribe book impressions here on the channel. I want to give a huge thank you to all of you for joining us for another amazing episode, and we'll see you all next month for June. Take care and have a wonderful day. And special announcement, I now have an online e-store on my website. So if you like to buy directly from me an ebook specifically, you can now do so. I accept PayPal and Venmo. Be on the lookout for more information on getting signed copies down the road. Until then, everybody, take care and have a wonderful day.